It was in an economics class when I met a girl, a Vietnamese girl by the last name of Tran. And this was the first girl I tried to pick up, the first Asian girl I tried to pick up in St. Mary's. So this following story is about this lovely, very short, she was only 5'3", Vietnamese girl who was born, as she told me in our encounter, she was born on the China Sea in a ferry boat while her family were evacuating Vietnam during the time of the boat people. So this is the story of Tran, who I've told her in person is my first friend I made at St. Mary's, and now I consider her in that regard to be a very special girl. I was taking an economics class at the time, St. Mary's University. The class was called macroeconomics, which is the bigger and overall picture. And I believed it would have been easier than microeconomics. It was a you have to take class, you have no choice. So I took this class, which was an extreme brain drainer on me. I mean, after the final exam, I was brain exhausted. Could not figure out why it was so taxing, but it used up every ounce of energy that your brain stores, and you could actually feel the dizziness. And it wasn't just me, other people in the class, the end of final exams felt the same way. Now, I took my classes depending on the Asian girls that were there. And my English class, for instance, had one Asian girl in it, but she dropped out fairly quickly, and by the time I figured it out, it was too late. You couldn't change your classes at that point. So the next class was economics, and there was one Chinese girl used to sit in front of class, and a Vietnamese girl used to sit in the back, but the Vietnamese girl was hardly there. She would either show up about 15 or 20 minutes late for class, every class, or she wouldn't be there at all. And the classes were only over a period of 3 months, so you had a certain amount of time to get it done. In macroeconomics, like I said, it was a real brain drainer. So the next class that I was in was a literature class, and the Asian girl in there dropped out too, although one eventually came in who was very short, extremely short, but really cute. And she sat so far in the back, and the class was so crowded I was not able to move near her, and we didn't have periods off or any time off that I could make any contact with her, so that didn't work out. But in the macroeconomics class, I decided that I was going to introduce myself and meet, sum up enough bravery to go in and meet this Vietnamese girl. So what I did was, we received these sheets of papers from our professor. I think his name was McClure or something like that. We received every day these sheets of paper in class regarding studies, what we were supposed to study for our tests and exams, when the tests and exams would occur, and what assignments were due and how to do them. So I decided that to meet this Vietnamese girl, that what I would do was, at the time though, I didn't know she was Vietnamese. I thought she was Chinese because I really wasn't paying much attention to nationals. And so this Vietnamese girl, in order to pick her up, I decided to use the sheets. What I would do is when the professor handed out the sheets, I would take double sheets for her, so that when she came into the class the next day or the next week, late as always, after class I could walk up to her and say, "Here, I got these sheets for you. This is what we're supposed to do in the assignments and whatnot." She was very surprised that I had done that. It took a lot of encouragement at first, but I said, nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? So I went up to her and I handed her the sheets. And I told her that, you're not here, then I'll get these sheets for you and all the information you need on upcoming assignments. So that was fine. That was my inroad to find out who she was and to try to pick her up. So she told me that she had to work at her father's business. And that explains why every time she came to class she was dressed in black pants with a white shirt. Eventually we got more and more become friends, and it was during the last class of the semester that I decided that I'm going to ask this girl out and try to become her boyfriend. But in the last class of the semester, just as the class ended, in walks this blonde-haired guy who was helping her with her books, and obviously this was her man, which it turned out it actually was. He was working in the company as well for her father, and as I was later to find out, this guy was stealing from the family. He would just help himself to whatever money was in the till that he wanted to take and pretend that, and hope that they wouldn't notice, but they did. He got fired. She dumped him eventually, but she was taken, so I decided, there's nothing I can do about it. But I noticed as she was packing up her things, like it took me a long time to get out of the classroom when the class ended. I would pack up my stuff, take my time doing it, put on all these winter clothes, and I was always the last one in the class. But this time she was hesitating. She was fiddling around with her books, taking books out of her bag, looking at them, putting them back in, because she was waiting to leave at the exact same time that I was. She was attracted to me, but she had this boyfriend who was right there, right beside her, right in front of her, so she couldn't do anything about it. But yeah, there was an attraction. So eventually he got fed up with it, her fiddling around with her books and taking them out of her bag, looking at them, putting them back in, trying to cause these delays, that he looked at her and he said, "Would you hurry the hell up? I want to get the hell out of this place." And he was really angry and pushy. And she said, "Just a second, I gotta check something." And she looked at her phone, opened it up, shut it down again, and walked out of the classroom with this arsehole of a blonde guy. And they were gone. And I didn't see her again for another 3 semesters went by. That's about over a year and a half. And I didn't see her again for another 3 semesters went by before I saw this girl again. What happened was I had taken, a year later, I had taken an astronomy class. Professor Pitcairn in the Burke building on St. Mary's University. And I had taken this astronomy class. It was an introductory to the stars. It was divided up into 2. You did the stars first, and then you did the solar system. And there was another Vietnamese girl in there, very petite, ultra cute. She looked extremely young, so I wasn't going to bother trying to pick her up. But we ended up becoming friends and sitting together in the class. And the last week of our classes, in walks Tran. She had skipped the entire semester until the last week. And so me and the other Vietnamese girl, who happened to be her friend, a girl by the name of Phong, it's pronounced in English, it's pronounced Phong. Phong and Tran got together to study, and Tran wanted me to study with her, so we'd become study partners. And we used to go to these cafes and hang out, drink coffee, and do a crash course study so that Tran could catch up on all the material that she had skipped out on the entire year, or the entire semester, I should say. Tran had extremely bad eyesight. If she didn't have her contacts on, or glasses, she couldn't see anything. But the amazing part about this is that 5 houses away from where I lived down the Armdale Rotary, on out.The Road, there was an Asian grocery store where I would buy my food. And it happened to be her father's grocery store, but I never knew that because I never seen her in there. There was her sister was in there. She's 12 years old at the time, or 13. I think she told me she's 12, and her parents and her brother. But I never ever saw Tran in there once. So I didn't figure it out until years later, actually. So the Trans eventually sold their grocery store on out.The Road and moved out onto the Bedford Highway near the Bedford Basin in Halifax. And she used to drive the delivery van for the family. When it came time to do the exam, the final exam on the Universe project, or the Universe class, Professor Pitcairn, she took the easy way out with Phong, and they wrote down all the answers that they thought might come up on the exam. They wrote it on their legs, and hit it with, so that at the end, near the end of the exam, Tran asked the professor if she'd go to the washroom, and Phong did the same thing. So he kind of knew what they were doing, right? He wasn't stupid. You're a professor. You've been there for years. You've seen it all. And I didn't know at the time. Didn't expect a thing. And afterwards, the 3 of us got together. She went up to Professor Pitcairn, thanked him for all his help in the classes and everything. We all did, the 3 of us. And I told Professor that we were hanging out in coffee shops and whatnot, doing crash studying. He didn't say anything at all because he knew damn well what she did. And I could see it in his eyes, and afterwards I walked outside the classroom. We went over to Phong's car because she was having trouble starting it up. She wanted me to listen to it and see if I could identify the problem, which was spark plugs. And then the girls told me about their cheating, how they had written all the answers down and went to the washroom. And I was flabbergasted. One of Tran's problems was that she liked to smoke. She liked to smoke a lot. And of course, I shouldn't argue because I was doing cigars at the time. And we hang out in front of the door sometimes and have smoking sessions, much to the dismay of other local students who hated the smell. Didn't like it on their clothes. She told me how well she was doing on gambling. She loved to gamble, but she was a good winner too. She also liked to eat, but was scared of her weight problem. Near the end of the semester, she wanted to hang out with me, and several times she asked me for my phone number, but I couldn't give it to her because, a poor student, I couldn't afford a phone, but I didn't want to tell her that. So I told her I had to give up the phone to watch, because I wanted to have cable TV to watch Star Trek. which is kind of true. But no, I couldn't afford a phone at that time, so I didn't buy one. So the only way that we could meet is in the classroom or on the street or whatever. And anyway, the next time I saw her after that, it was about maybe a year later. It was summertime, and we were both taking summer classes. I was taking the calculus class that did me in and for a science program, and she was taking the alternate, which was a architectural math class. And she had told me that she got kicked out of university for not showing up because she had taken off too much time. So they had kicked her out for a year for a probation. So she was back again, and she wanted me to take that class with her so I could help her study and do the notes and everything, but I wouldn't do it. She had a boyfriend again at that time, so I was out of luck again. Her boyfriend was a Vietnamese musician. When he looked at me, I could see that he felt threatened by my interest in Tran, that maybe I would take her from him. But I'm not. Number one rule of the dating scene is don't move in on another guy's girl, because he's probably very much in love with her and spent a lot of effort trying to be with that girl. So you shouldn't really move in on his territory. Unless, of course, the guy is a complete arsehole. I cough like that because the weather's so damp, and I wrecked my bronchial tubes from cigar smoking. So whenever dampness hits, I start coughing. So anyway, I didn't switch from calculus to do the architectural class, which I should have done in hindsight, because the calculus class was a major mistake and I could not get through it. In fact, I flunked the damn thing. I got, I think, 45 out of 100. You had to have 70 to pass. I got 45 out of 100. So years passed, and I didn't see her on campus anymore. And I went to her parents' Vietnamese restaurant. I didn't see her on campus anymore. And I went to her parents' Vietnamese grocery store on Bedford Highway to do my shopping. And when I went up, there was two girls in there. They're dressed in white and black, which is their business color, I guess. And I went up to the counter to purchase or pay for the items that I bought. And the girl behind the counter, who was kind of chubby, I admit, had her hair pinned back, looked at me and she said, "You don't recognize me, do you?" And her sister was standing on the other side of the counter looking at me. She was now about 18, I guess. They were both working to save at their father's place to save money so they could go to university. And I said to her, I immediately opened up my mind's eye and I knew it was her. So I said, "Yeah, I remember you," and I gave her a name and that, and she said my name, so she remembered me. And we got into this conversation about what she had been doing and everything. She got kicked out of St. Mary's again for not showing up for class. And we were discussing how her life was going. And as I'm talking to her, she's becoming more and more wrapped up in me as we're talking. And her father, who was in the back room, wanted to get her attention, and she wasn't paying any attention whatsoever to him calling her out to the back room. So she wasn't going, and I continued the conversation with her. We discussed when was she going back to university. Her sister wanted to go to Dalhousie, but everybody was considering going back to university in St. Mary's because it was extremely expensive to go to Dalhousie. And she was saving up for money. She discussed the family business and everything that they were doing. And her father continued to call her out back, but she did, it was like she couldn't hear him at all. So her brother, who was in the back room, he came out and called her, but she didn't acknowledge his presence as well. So what happened next was the father had wrote out a letter to his daughter, gave it to the brother, who brought it out, sat it down the counter in front of Tran so that she could read it, so she would know what the father was saying. And she picked up the letter, started reading it, and then she looked at me and she said, I can't read Vietnamese. I don't know what this says. And because she didn't want to go back. She wanted to continue the conversation and stay with me. And I said, we got it talking. And then finally her sister looked at her and said, look, and she said her name. I can't tell you her first name. She said, look, Father wants you to go out back and put the bok choy into bags. It's got to be done right now. And so she looked at her sister, and she looked at me, and there was this longing in her eyes. Did not end the conversation, though. We could just hang out a little bit longer, and she said, no, I got to get back to work now. So she said, how is it that you remembered me after all this time, years? Because it was maybe 4 or 5 years later. And I looked at her and I said, you know what, I don't remember you up here. I said, I remember you down here. That's where I hold your memory in my heart. And she smiled, man. I'm telling you, that girl smiled so brightly. It was so warm, so inviting. So I said goodbye to her and I left the store and came back. When I came back, I decided, you know what, I really like this girl. I'm going to try to hook up with her. So I came back about 2 or 3 weeks later and found out from her sister that the Tran had a fight with her father and had quit the family business. And I believe there was some type of misunderstanding. It's their own private business. But, she just wasn't there when I went back, so I missed out on her. I did see her a year later after that on campus at St. Mary's University. She was trying again to get her degree. She still hadn't had it. I think she was about 30 years old at that time. When I first met her, she was about 21 probably. Now, maybe she's 29, 28 then. Yeah, 21 years old when I first met her, but she was something like 27, 28 when I saw her for the last time. She had gone back to St. Mary's University. She was on campus, but she was really upset. And as she was walking towards me on the sidewalk, when she noticed me, she walked out into the parking lot. And I suspect it's because she just failed one of her exams. And she just did not want to talk about it at all. Because it was such a struggle for her in school, just to even attend a class. And when you get older, maybe it wasn't working out in the memory, I guess. Memory wasn't as sharp as before. Well, I lost contact with her over the last couple of years. I lost contact with her. And I believe, according to her sister or another friend who told me that she had moved to Toronto to take up a life there. I did see her sister on a in front of St. Mary's. She'd gotten on the bus behind me. Or no, she was on the bus. I sat down the bus in front of her. I believe she might have recognized me, but I'm not sure. She had gotten on the telephone, was having a conversational fight with her boyfriend. Apparently he had forgot to plug in the cell phone. She was just ripping him apart. But anyway, to this day, Tran is still, and forever will be, the first girl I tried to pick up in my attempt to find an Asian girlfriend. And Tran to this day is my first friend that I ever made at St. Mary's University.